All right, everyone, we should be live as usual with today's news roundup. This is a big one. We've got 12 or 13 different news stories to cover. Bear with me. I'm going to try to get to Superchats as I go through the news topics as well. Let's make sure, though, that we are indeed live on Rumble. I do see that Rumble Superchats is working. Rumble Rants, rather. But I've got to make sure that the stream is actually going as well. Sometimes it takes a couple times refreshing it, so give me a moment, please. Come on, you know you want to go live. I know you want it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's live. All right, everyone. We have lots and lots of news to cover today. The first piece of news, Elizabeth Warren blasts Fed for the recession. Her solution is inflation. She's jumping the gun. She's basically saying, well, we're going to fall into a recession. And she has that marble mouth thing going on because all she ever drinks is her $100 bottles of white wine from her vineyard and shit. Elizabeth Warren, at Senator Warren. The Fed's aggressive interest rate hikes risk triggering a recession. Powell even conceded they won't reduce food or gas prices, and many key drivers of inflation are outside Fed control. Congress should do its part to lower costs. Read my WSJ op-ed. Here's what Elizabeth Warren wants to do with the incoming Biden recession. More inflation. So, fuck basic economic understanding. Let's spend even more money, drive costs up even further. Maybe you can get a minimum wage hike, for what little it's worth, which is very, very little at this point. Did I not suggest literally the other day, a couple of hours before she tweeted this out, did I not suggest that Biden and his inner circle, she said definitely part of it, were laying the groundwork to blame the Fed for the incoming recession? They've got a multi-layer defense strategy. And the first strategy is just linguistic. It is word games. Deny that there is actually a recession. Well, we've had 2 quarters of negative growth, and joblessness is now rising, and other problems are happening, wages pacing behind inflation. But no, that's not really a recession. Don't worry about it too much. Yeah, it'll probably be even worse in Q3, but don't worry about it. Please register Dem for the midterms. It's basically the selling point, which is really funny, and it won't work. No, that's my prediction. As of tomorrow, we will get the declaration of whether there is an official recession in the United States. There's no official definition of recession, but generally speaking, it is just 2 negative quarters of growth. All of this other stuff they're trying to muddy the waters with is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. There is no holistic approach to what constitutes a recession. It will likely be declared tomorrow. So the first layer of defense is to deny that it is a recession. When that near inevitably doesn't work, I think that there are 2 basic strategies that the Biden White House has in mind. The first is blame Putin. Well, if he hadn't invaded Ukraine, everything would be hunky-dory. Yeah, the problem happened or started happening before the Ukraine invasion, partially due to lockdownerism, but don't blame me. It was somebody else's fault. And the second, and he laid the groundwork literally last month for this, was to blame the Fed. They overshot. They rose interest rates too vociferously and too quickly. They upped the interest rates, and it slowed the economy down. And even though in Q1 and most of Q2, there was no rate hike, somehow all of that period of time is the responsibility of the Fed. Some people will actually buy this garbage. Warren is getting out ahead of it even more than the Biden White House at large. She's effectively saying, look, now I've got the plan. No, don't raise the interest rates. The Fed is doing the wrong thing, helping Biden in the process by her insinuation. No, we should spend more money. Inflation's not a problem. Yeah, it's a tax on the poor and the middle class, but nobody really cares because Elizabeth Warren is worth, what, $10-15 million or something like that. So that's the first news story of the day. My prediction came true in far less than 24 hours. It was only a couple of hours after the live stream the other day that Elizabeth Warren came out and said this. This does not surprise me in the least. It's hilarious, to be clear. And she's completely wrong. Third, if you were to institute even more funny money spending, driving inflation even further, You would heighten the recession at some point because the costs would become so high, it would necessarily reduce the economy. You wouldn't need a Fed interest rate hike. You would be doing it organically. How very funny. News story number 2, the Washington Post. Breaking news, the Justice Department is investigating President Donald Trump's actions as part of its criminal probe of efforts to overturn the 2020 election results, according to 4 people familiar with the matter. Now, let's dig into this on multiple layers. The first layer is it is investigating, supposedly, and we'll get to that separately, his actions as part of a probe. So number 1 is this probe is not of Donald Trump. They're simply lumping it in with an existing probe. Number 2, we're not sure that this probe even exists. This is from people familiar with the matter. So it could be anyone. It's who gives a shit? It could be somebody in a bathroom that called up the Washington Post on their cell phone and said, hey, I have some deep dirt on Donald Trump. He's going down this time. Hashtag Blue Anon. We have no clue whether this is even real or not. Now, we've seen plenty of claims that there are going to be investigations into Donald Trump, etc., over the last few years, and mostly they haven't panned out. They've been looking into his taxes. They found nothing. They've looked into Trump University and all these things. Generally, nothing was found. If there was business impropriety, in most cases, Trump was not directly calling the shots. So who cares? I think personally that this is an effort to muddy the water in the coming months. Midterms are coming up. The Republicans are going to slam a jam of the Democrats out of existence in the House, possibly destroy them in the Senate, certainly in state houses. What do you want not to happen? You do not want Donald Trump to be the nominee. If he is the nominee, you want him to be embattled. What better way than to pretend that he is potentially going to get indicted by some criminal probe in order to get other Republicans to try to jump down his throat and primary him, to try to scare the Republican Party at large into saying Trump is dead weight. He's too scary. He's too high a risk. We can't go with Donald Trump. We have to have a full-on primary process, thus taking him off the campaign trail for an extended period of time. So that he loses. And that's because they would like to astroturf a controlled opposition Romney-esque Republican in as the nominee. Maybe it's DeSantis, maybe it's Nikki Haley, certainly Mike Pence would be on that list. And if you do that, if you have a Romney v. Obama or a McCain v. Obama sort of ticket again, you don't have to do any honking in the general election. It literally doesn't matter who wins. They are afraid of Trump. They're terrified of him. I'm telling you right now, everything is lining up to prove that Donald Trump really is public enemy number 1 of the deep state. They really genuinely fear him. And that's because he really genuinely does want to help the populist, anti-globalist cause. Haverkamp Harassment Chronicles. Russia and Ukraine just agreed to resume wheat and fertilizer trade with the world. That should keep inflation down. Plus, we just avoided a World War famine. Didn't the Russians, after signing off on that, bomb the port that was responsible for the grain shipments? I think I read that was from the other day. That's not even a new thing. And then I think the UN, the NATO countries stepped in and were trying to fuck around with the deal anyway. We'll see if that actually happens. We'll see if anything actually comes of that. It'd be good, definitely, but it wouldn't help the inflation rate. Grievance share. Anyone who still thinks Trump did something wrong after 6 years of investigation just proves themselves to be an NPC. Exactly. That's my thoughts exactly. He's got him even more scared because of his threat to tear apart the bureaucracy. Man, that would be 10 times better than anything he did in his first fucking term. If he accomplishes only that as president and stacks the bureaucracy with people who are willing to deal with budget cuts, can you imagine what a boon to the U.S. economy alone that would be? Elianne Iseland. Hi, Sticks. I like to listen to your videos while knitting. Very conductive to a productive knitting session. Do you knit? No, I don't knit because I couldn't figure out how to do it. Knit 1, purl 2. I don't understand. My mom used to knit a lot, and I would look at the knitting books, and it was like a foreign language to me. Sam IO6, loving the live stream, Sticks. Congrats on the little one. Thank you. So yeah, the DOJ is supposedly investigating Trump, but we don't know if it is. It may not be pertinent to Trump himself and might be tangential to an investigation into other criminal probe efforts. And it wouldn't matter if he's done nothing wrong, and I don't think that he did. And it looks like shenanigans to me. So yeah, that's a fairly dense news story there. I made a main video this morning on it and gave my opinion, and I think it was worth doing so. It is major news. It's mainly major news because it's the kind of shenanigans we saw from the legacy media throughout most of the 2010s. Oh, Donald Trump hired Russian hookers to piss on the Obama's bed. Well, where's the proof? Oh, there is none? There's no probe at all? We find out there is no real investigation. We find out that, what was his name? Tom Arnold probably doesn't actually have a VHS tape of this happening. The Pissgate tape that he keeps talking about because he wants attention. Kirozu Desoya, Russia didn't bomb the port, the CIA did. They are openly admitted to be operating with impunity in the area. Hong Kong, it's possible. Or maybe the Russians really did it. We have absolutely no clue. I've talked about the fog of war with regards to Ukraine. You don't know what's happening in that area. Not unless you're physically there and in command of something. And then if you are, of course, you're going to use propaganda to try to obfuscate that. So you're not going to get a straight story from anyone. Pure blood. Big Mike was doing the pissing. I'll Paint saying, Nikki Haley is ineligible, not natural born. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5. I think that would be debated. Where was she born? Let me look it up. Heard of the controversy. Let's see. Nikki Haley, nay Randhawa. She was born in Bamberg, South Carolina. So yeah, she would be she'd be eligible to be president, but she won't be. To be clear, she has a snowflake's chance in fucking hell. Her parents were not American citizens. That's irrelevant. If you're born on U.S. soil, you can become naturalized as a U.S. citizen. You don't have to like the fact that this is the case, but that is the way that it works, legally speaking. Story 3, and this is a funny one. This one is more humorous, so get beyond, Trump investigation, possible civil war breaking out if the DOJ is not full of shit, and so forth. Senate Democrats posting this. Breaking, Hulu is rejecting our ads calling out GOP attacks on abortion access and gun safety. Their shady policies amount to outrageous political censorship. Americans deserve to know the truth about these issues, and Hulu has no right to block it. Hey, Dems, especially Senate Dems, I know Klobuchar will let that stand as a point on its own. Have you not spent the last half decade or so saying it's a private company, they can do what they want? You have no right to advertise or take part on any platform unless they want you there. And Hulu is on demand. Like, this isn't even an actual platform. They're publishers. They publish the material that's on their site and their service. There is no controversy over them being able to reject your ads. I'm sorry that they're not going to run on Hulu. And by the way, in breaking news, people actually still use Hulu. That's probably the surprising part. The irony, the hypocrisy here is really funny. Imagine you're part of a party that's been talking about how a private company, as long as it's doing what you want it to do, should be able to censor anyone for any reason, even extra legally in some cases, effectively defaming them by claiming that they're engaging in behavior that they're clearly not. That's perfectly fine. The second that your ads get blocked on a network that nobody gives a shit about anyway, I don't know why they're upset about this. It's a big problem. It's unacceptable political censorship. They have no right to block it. Well, yes, they do. They can do whatever they want. You've given them that ability. You've explicitly created that ability in many cases. Very funny. Yeah, a lot of people are saying they didn't get notified of the live stream. I did notice. It was also slow that anyone sent in a super chat, so I'm wondering, YouTube must have put me back in the naughty box again, but who gives a shit? There's almost 600 people watching on Rumble as well, so I'm not sure how much longer I have to care about YouTube and its live streaming foibles. Fire down below. Who do you want to see as House Majority Leader after the midterms when Republicans take the House? Me like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, she'd be all right. Or someone similar. on the basis, or Myra Flores, actually, potentially, simply because it would piss off the libshits. You shouldn't choose a Speaker of the House, particularly because of their stratagem or their encyclopedic understanding of legal terms. Choose someone that pisses off the left, just to twist the knife a little bit more. Twitch notified me, says Chronicles of Fire. Yeah, Twitch is better at notifications than fucking YouTube at this point. That's hilarious. IL Paint is still going with it. Native born is not the same as natural born, and the only way to obtain natural born citizenship is through inheritance from citizen parents, plural. False. That's not the way that it's practiced. You would need a Supreme Court decision to actually detail that. The way that it currently works, if you are born on U.S. soil, you are eligible for U.S. citizenship. You become naturalized at the embassy. If you have a parent who's a U.S. citizen, again, you're eligible in a foreign country as well if you go to the embassy to become naturalized. That's the way that it works legally. You can debate that, whether that's the originalist interpretation of the way the Constitution works, but that doesn't matter because there's no court case regarding that. Natural born is different. It doesn't matter. Again, you take it up with the Supreme Court, lodge a case. But first, you're going to have a situation in which you have a grievance. So Nikki Haley gets elected, for example, and you go before the courts and say, look, she's not eligible to be elected. But before the fact that she's elected, you can't really do anything about it. Legally speaking, there has to be a proper complaint with regards to a case in most higher courts anyway for them to even consider taking it up. So to be clear, yes, if you're born in South Carolina, you are eligible to become the president of the United States. You can disagree with it, but you're disagreeing with court precedent. Next story, NPR. This is also a funny one. Dr. Fauci, our favorite doctor, by the way, says the government must combat any homophobic stigma associated with monkeypox. Yes, everyone out there, monkeypox is not the problem. It's the homophobia associated with monkeypox. That's what Dr. Fauci thinks. To be clear, and again, one of the main architects of the COVID response, he's going with it, continuing to be a doctor on TV and effectively nothing more than a political empty suit. The fact is this, homophobia is effectively, my apologies, still pollen season, I suppose. Fauci is going with the line. It's sort of similar with like Twitter blocking the use of the term groomer. I guess the idea is that the fact that anal sex is a main transmission method for monkeypox, we know this, it's mainly male on male, that's homophobic. Like that all gay men just indiscriminately have unprotected sex in the ass. But that is the main methodology by which it's being spread. It is effectively, most of the time, at least at the moment, operating like an STD. It's not being spread by droplets or handshakes or casual contact. It's being spread by anal sex. This doesn't mean that the people are gay. A woman could get fucked in the ass and she could get monkeypox. Well, obviously that's not a gay situation. A couple of lesbians could get monkeypox. But ignoring the fact that orgies and kink and swing culture are creating the problem that he himself identifies. He agrees with the WHO decision to keep it as a major emergency of worldwide concern. It's being caused by anal sex. And that's going to be more common among people who are homosexual. If there's no vagina to put the penis in, you'd think anal sex is more likely to occur. That's the truth. It has nothing to do with saying, oh, but gay people are bad or gay people are diseased or something. This is a great way to help monkeypox spread by not telling people of all kinds. Simply take 4 to 6 weeks off from loose moral activities, from casual sexual encounters, from unprotected sex. 4 to 6 weeks. That's all you need. You can reduce the new number of cases by an order of magnitude or more, and then the rest can be snuffed out very easily. It wouldn't be hard. They should have done this when the outbreak first manifested itself. Instead, they have prevented themselves from doing so because they're afraid of being labeled gay haters. They're afraid of being labeled homophobic. Well, I mean, no reasonable person would fear that to the exclusion of doing their job as a medical practitioner. Dr. Fauci, of course, is not a normal person. He is crazy. He's off the deep end, basically. Dusty Brown. I have a garden with squash, tomatoes, zucchini, and watermelon. Pumpkin because of the alarm bells you sound out. Very satisfying and literally fruitful. Thanks, Sticks. Not a huge fan of watermelon myself. I cannot digest it for some reason. Ate watermelon as a kid once and got really, really sick. And it's just literally just water, so I don't know exactly what I got sick from, but just didn't agree with me. Danger Aaron, greetings, Sticks. Would you predict that it's possible the 24 election has a high probability of being honked? I can't use that word you're using. Given the Dem track record the last 3 years. Clank from the Midwest Trucker. No, because multiple states have de-honkified their elections, which is good. We need to continue that good work after the midterms. Make sure to go into the land and vote for local and state level positions. Don't just vote for the federal level ones, and knock on some doors. If all of you did that literally to just one person, it would change thousands and thousands of votes. That could be good. So yeah, apparently the main problem with monkeypox, because I mean, it's not alarming enough to actually scare people because its death rate is what, 3 or 4%, and it's easy to not get it because of the main vector of transmission. Apparently, because it's not damning enough and not scary enough, they've decided to use it as an id poll opportunity to try to combat homophobia. I'm sure that gay people, Dr. Fauci, are very happy with you aligning them with the monkeypox spread. It's very funny projection when you really think about it. Again, it's sort of like Twitter banning the word groomer. Next story, we're going to topically analyze some midterm polling. I think I've also got Biden's approval polling as well that we'll go over. Battle for the House 2022. By the way, links in the description to all of the things that I'm covering. You should follow along. Make sure to analyze things yourself. Do not just rely upon my own analysis. So you got time, sit down and have a good time. Battle for the House 2022. Current House, 220 Democrats, 209 Republicans, and 6 vacancies. I think Liz Cheney's seat will be empty soon, too. Right now, if the Republicans gain not a single toss-up seat, so they lose every toss-up, all 33 of them as listed in the aggregate here on RCP, they would still end up with a clear majority. They would end up with a majority similar to the Dems' current majority, even if they lose every single contested toss-up seat. There are 2 problems for the Democrats in protecting those seats. All but 4 of those toss-ups are currently held by Dem incumbents. So the Republicans, even if they only gain a handful of them, like a tenth of these, have still managed to at least break even on the toss-up seats because they've got 4 incumbents that are in that category. They still break even if they only take a tiny proportion of those seats. They need 4 of them. Technically not quite that, because some of the lean GOP seats are also Dem incumbents. In fact, more than half of them are. In fact, there are 5 different seats that are likely GOP that are Dem incumbents. There are exactly 1 seats that are lean Dem that are Republican incumbents. It is going to be a goddamn washout. If they take half of these toss-up seats, they're already, what would that be? 25 seats ahead in the House of Representatives. And I think that they'll take more than that. I think they'll take the majority of the toss-up seats. 2/3, maybe 3/4, could be virtually all of them. Here's why. You have a registration disadvantage for the Dems for the first time in many years. You also definitely have an enthusiasm disadvantage for the Dems. Number 2, and number 3, you have generally weak candidates among the Democrats. I would favor the Republicans at this point to win at least 25 of the toss-up seats. They may even pick up a couple of the seats that lean Dem. This would be the Gingrich effect. He's claiming effectively that the Republicans win all of the toss-up and lean Dem seats due to unexpected turnout, leading to a 50-plus seat sweep. I don't think you get up quite that high, but I would expect the Republicans to handily take the House. I don't think that there's any possibility that the Democrats managed to hold it. At this point, there is effectively a 0% chance of that happening, in my own personal kind of humble opinion. Metal Raider 2181. I wonder how many of these people going to orgies are the same ones that called others selfish grandma killers for not wearing masks. Probably most of them. The majority, to be clear. Michael Cricklow, Russia is pulling out of the ISS by 2024. Good move? That doesn't change anything. Who cares? The International Space Station, isn't it a outdated junk at this point anyway? They probably want their own space station. Muddy Drip 6665. Do you expect the salt weapon ban to be defeated today? My understanding is they only need a few votes for it to get passed. It literally doesn't matter if the assault weapons ban gets passed by the House. It is DOA, to be clear, in the Senate. It was literally part of the initial anti-gun move that Senate Republicans jumped on board with. One of the provisions that got it passed was specifically taking this out of the bill. It has a 0% chance of passing. Even in a million years, if it were to pass, it doesn't even grandfather in existing weapons, so it wouldn't even mean anything. It just end up lapsing like the last assault weapons ban did under George W. Yes, Tyler Morrison is correct, and this should probably be brought up. Didn't Fauci investigate bathhouses in the 80s? Will he now do a deep dive at fetish festivals? Yes, you'll remember Dr. Fauci was one of the main minds of the AIDS response in the United States, which might explain why the AIDS response was so belated and so shitty. And yes, he and his people went to gay bathhouses to observe sexual behavior, which was rife at the time and apparently still is now, and made various conclusions from that. And initially, Fauci was coming out, this was 80, I can't remember, 1980 something, initially came out and was like, well, we're not exactly sure. It's possible you can get AIDS from casual contact within the family. So you hug your dad or you shake someone's hand and all of a sudden you're dying. And of course, this spread fear, which was the point. And because of that fear, people went massively authoritarian and they supported quarantine and even the extradition of people with AIDS to some desert island, tattooing people with AIDS, keeping them from working in the food industry, and so on forth. Doesn't it seem a little bit like the COVID response, except that AIDS is actually deadly? I wonder why that's so similar. Next story, highly potent weed creating marijuana addicts worldwide, study says. Oh man, I'm such a weed addict. Look at my eyes, man. I can see mushrooms on them. Higher concentrations of tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, the part of the marijuana plant that makes you high, man, are causing more people to become addicted in many parts of the world, man, a new review of studies has found. Compared with people who use lower potency products, typically 5 to 10 milligrams per gram of THC, those who use higher potency cannabis, hold up, what was I saying? Are more likely to experience addiction and mental health outcomes, man. According to the study published Monday in the journal Lancet Psychiatry. A bunch of reefer madness horseshit. Oh my God, there's more THC in this weed. Well, then fucking smoke one less hit of the weed. That's all you have to do. Who's getting this weed, by the way? Can I please ask? And who's producing it? Pharmaceutical companies? At this point, probably it's Boehner's people doing this. Marijuana, to be clear, is not generally addictive in the chemical sense. Yes, it can become habituating. Is it something you can become chemically dependent on? Yes, if you smoke a fucking lot of weed over a fucking lot of months or years. It was like that story, I can't even, what was it? It's called scromiting. That was the term that they've concocted now for it. People that use a shit ton of weed over many years may get to the point where their body is so dependent that they end up in severe pain, like vomiting and shit as a result of withdrawal from weed. How many people, and especially under Bidenomics, have enough money to buy enough weed to actually get to that point? Unless they're like dabbing, unless they're a complete moron and they're extracting the THC in a concentrated form. How many people even have the money to smoke that much weed? Even the cheap brick weed, what the fuck does it even go for now? I was getting it for like $20 a slice when I was down in Tampa, but that was years ago. You didn't have Bidenomic problems at the time. That was early wave Obama. Great Recession. The prices fell, I guess. Darius Harvey sent $9.99. No comment, thank you. Rusty Shackelford sent, my old teacher is running for Iowa House as a Dem, known for grooming. We'll post link. Can we get some clanking? Yeah, if you want to DM me that, I'll take a look at it. Hello Kitty sent $10 without a comment. Edgy Bra, if you see the lights in the sky, do not look at them. They are not aliens or angels. It is a control system that is capable of hypnotizing you and trapping you. Please heed this warning. Maybe. I want to believe. Dan Malone, 53. Clear and present danger method of elimination. Yeah. Yeah, why don't people just fucking grow their own weed? Oh, wait, that's because the government doesn't want you to do that. It would rather you buy it from a pharmacy, from a dispensary. Weed is $85 an ounce in Michigan. That's pretty cheap. That must be what kind of fucking weed costs that little? I remember it ranged from 20 bucks would get you a slice down in Tampa. Now there was some seed and stem in it, but it was pretty good weed overall. It wasn't bad. And then if you got like the regs or something, it was like 10 a gram around Rutland. If you went to UVM and you were getting like the top grade hydro hippie shit that was grown by some crazy old hippie who went to Woodstock in combination with a couple of trust fund hipsters just to make, money on the side, you were paying $15-20 a gram for that weed, just to be clear. And it was good. That White Widow was, fucking dripping to the point where it was like, oh, will this even light up if I try to smoke this? That was pretty good. John Hoyle, given that I have to pay my city over $7,000 a year for the house taxes I owe, is there really private property ownership in the U.S.? Yes, there are states with no property taxes, and there are communities in those states similar. There just aren't many of them. It should be nationwide. There shouldn't be any property tax on primary residencies up to some arbitrary value. Edgy Bra, $5, no comment, thank you. Yeah, I'm not allowed to encourage people to smoke weed, but I guess that that's not the right weed to smoke if you're interested in that. In the United States, about 3 in 10 people who use marijuana have cannabis use disorder, a medical term for marijuana addiction, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease and Prevention. Oh, so in association with the people who still keep it as a top scheduled drug with no known health benefits, highly addictive and very deadly. That's completely stupid. A rise in potency. They've been trying this now that the gateway drug mythology is gone, and now that the mythology of it in and of itself killing people is gone, or driving them mad, or whatever, being linked to violent crime, they have to simply say, well, yeah, marijuana is fine, it's okay, but these days marijuana has gone too far. The kind of marijuana that they have now is totally different from what your parents and grandparents had. Yeah, okay, I believe that. You analyzed every piece of cheap, shitty brickweed that ever came into the United States from Mexico. Yeah. The Spence Fencer, 5 a gram, 20 a bud, and 12 gram cheap oil, 35 an ounce. Yeah. JGS, weed is definitely a gateway drug. False. It's actually the other way around. What ended up happening, and their studies didn't fix for this, they never asked people which drug they tried first. It turns out that marijuana is commonly used for the withdrawal effects of other drugs. In that way, it's similar to alcohol. Somebody is coming off of crack or heroin or something, and they take the edge off with weed or with alcohol. Yeah, alcohol is more of a gateway drug than weed, especially due to its lowering of inhibition. Yin Yang Salad Gang, slow mode sucks, Tarl. Yeah, the problem is if I didn't have slow mode on, there'd be 100 spammers in here, number one. Probably leftoids would attack the chat too. And number two, I couldn't get to the Superchats. I wouldn't have any time to talk about the news articles. Which reminds me, the next one. Bipartisan gay marriage vote marks a breakthrough. The House passage of the Respect for Marriage Act underscores that Congress, not the courts, is where social issues should be debated. Now, what this would do is codify gay marriage at the federal level. I have several things to say about it. And I say this as someone who believes gay marriage should be legal. I don't have a problem with it. We'll get into the good and then we'll get into the bad. The good is that what this amounts to is them doing what they did not do with abortion. That is that with abortion, prior to the decision there, prior to Dobbs, there was no attempt by liberals or by the lamestream or by any combination of political heads to tackle the issue and say, hey, Roe v. Wade could fall at some point, even though they knew it was going to be before the SCOTUS for more than a year. Roe v. Wade goes before SCOTUS. They took no action whatsoever to make sure that it would remain federally legal. So the good thing is they actually have decided to attempt to do their job. And of course, this issue is totally different than abortion. With abortion, the majority of Americans believe it should be legal, but they also believe it should be more regulated than it is in like Virginia or Vermont. And I have no problem with that. If you want to cut it off first trimester plus woman's life in danger, so be it. I have no problem with that. That's 99.9% of the abortions anyway. That doesn't really affect anything. With gay marriage, though, if you look at repeated polling by basically any firm, those that still bother to poll on it at all, it is overwhelmingly supported in the United States. I support it in part for a civic reason, which is that it is a state property contract. Religious marriage and state marriage are not the same thing. The term marriage is applied to the state's registry system is medical proxy, inheritance of property, child support, things like that of a legal nature. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with morality. And by the way, it's exactly the same as civil unions. It's just under a different term. They decided they would use the same term because using different ones didn't really make any civic sense. That being said, here's the problem. Here's the problem with this, and it probably will pass the Senate, and I would support it. I do, again, support gay marriage rights. Here's the problem. The problem is the federal government probably in the wake of a Supreme Court decision, if it ever is handed down with regards to gay marriage and says, look, no, equal protection does not apply to this. This is not marriage as the founders would have envisioned it, going full originalist. Will the federal law supersede the state law? No. The answer is no. An additional court decision would strike down what they're seeking to pass here and hand it to the states because of the 10th Amendment. So while I support the idea, and while certainly I don't think it's remotely pragmatic to repeal gay marriage rights, and while I think the Republicans would be insane and asinine to try to do so, if it does happen, if there is a case that works its way before SCOTUS, and I have a feeling SCOTUS would simply refuse to hear the case as a precursor, as a guard, basically, against this happening, I do not expect that the gay marriage at the federal level vote here would mean anything. It would fall prey of the 10th Amendment. And while I wouldn't agree with the decision, legally speaking, there would be basically little you could do about it. You'd have reciprocal licensing and things like that. That would probably be a thing. Other than that, I don't think there's anything that can be done at the federal level. John, have you ever seen or met Bernie before in Vermont? I've seen him multiple times. He's campaigned in Burlington. I actually won second prize in a senior law essay writing contest where we were analyzing a debate between him and Rich Tarrant back in 2007. That was fun. I got a $100 Staple gift card for that. Saw him coming out of the airport once. And so I've seen him around. He does occasionally stop over in Vermont. I think less so these days. Plantation sensation. I became dependent on weed. Eventually, it consumed my life and wrecked my anxiety. 2 years without it, and I'm much happier. Oh, good for you. You save a lot of money. The Spence Fencer. Legal in Oregon? Stupid cheap. I am not advertising. Rusty Shackelford. Also, rest in peace, Speedy. A great dog. The best. Eric Willison. $10. No comment. Thank you. Reinfold FZ, pen is Peruvian currency. Cool. I got a donation from Peru. I'd like to see Peru someday. Lots of interesting food. By the way, tonight I'm making Parthian chicken. Yes, one of my subscribers, followers on Twitter, actually turned me on to that idea when I mentioned asafoetida, which is an herb often used in Indian, Turkish, and certain cuisines. And I was looking at that. And they suggested this recipe and linked a video to another channel where they cooked it. So I'm going to be following that recipe more or less and seeing how it works. This is food from about 1,500 years ago, the oldest cookbook in the world from ancient Rome. Yes, it is still extant. You have to do a little bit of guesswork with some of the recipe parts, though. I skimmed over it earlier. I can't wait to read the whole thing. Dan Malone 53 sent $5 without a comment. Thank you. So yeah, as far as the gay marriage thing goes, I support gay rights and equality. I have no problem with gay marriage. I consider it a non-issue, as most Americans do. But this may be an empty gesture if there is a court case, because the court could simply say the federal government has no right to supersede the states. In fact, I think it would be likely. Thus, this will be can kicked down the road into the future, just like with abortion, and it'll be a big fucking problem in the future probably, so that we have to fucking deal with when all my hair is gray. Next story, FCC commissioner urges TikTok to be removed from Apple and Google stores over unacceptable national security risk. Let me weigh in on this really briefly, because I'm not going to use TikTok because, I'm not, an 80 or lower IQ. I have an attention span that's over 30 seconds. And fucking, I'd feel like an old fogey if I was using TikTok anyway, because most of the people using it seem to be like mindless tweens talking about in the past. You can imagine TikTok 10 years ago, all of it would be about Justin Bieber. It's cringe. It's completely retarded. Here's what I would say. When the government comes out, I even criticized Trump mildly over this, and attacks a website, especially one that's being used mainly by kids, by minors. You make it cooler. You inadvertently popularize it. And there's no possibility of TikTok, because it is so big and so powerful, unless they strike a deal with some competing company to actually do this. In fact, if it were banned by Google, it would set up potentially an antitrust suit, because what does Google have? YouTube has YouTube Shorts. Oh, you banned a direct competitor with an aspect of one of your main subsites. We're suing you. Even though it's a Chinese company, it does have some offshore little headquarters in the United States. They would sue, and they'd probably be successful. By the way, Rumble, by the way, right now I think suing YouTube already over the same principle. While I would never use TikTok, and while TikTok is cringe and shouldn't be used because it's basically just Chinese spyware, this is not the way to go about combating it. The way to go about it is with the private marketplace. Fucking tell Elon Musk to restart Vine. That would be my best guess as to how you could combat TikTok. And by the way, people are too alarmist over it anyway. Yes, there's a lot of cringe and a lot of weird shit there, and stupid challenges, the fuck yourself challenge, the shoot yourself challenge and stuff. I'm sure those would be really big on TikTok at some point. Is it really any different, this sort of rhetoric, what we got about YouTube back in the 2000s? Is it really that fucking different? And if you remember YouTube in the 2000s, is the shit there really more edgy and cringy? I don't think so. The only difference is a much lower attention span. It's regrettable, but it's not exactly a national security threat. So I don't really give a shit. I mean, again, I'm not going to use TikTok because I have a life. I have a brain that functions. I actually am capable of having original ideas and not just hyper editing 5 seconds of footage over and over again to make some sort of lame ass social point. Who gives a fucking shit about TikTok? Nasmer, Styx is being recommended on my Twitch. Good, you should follow me on Twitch. 5,100 people already are. Yeah, let me complain about TikTok while I'm using YouTube. Or even worse, when people are on Facebook complaining about TikTok. Okay, you already gave all your data to the Chinese government. You might as well have a TikTok channel. There's nothing else that they can steal. Who gives a shit? Oh, by the way, RCP now makes you solve some sort of dumbass puzzle in order to use their site. And it logs you off the page after roughly 30 minutes. So I said that. Now we're going to talk about President Biden's job approval. I see a floor and ceiling forming. I believe that he has a new approval floor and ceiling. Now, let me go back a little bit to many months ago. He had an old floor and ceiling. That is an upper limit on disapproval, which was much higher already. A lower limit of how low his approval could go. And what typically happens with people in politics, you have partisans that tend to support you, and you have ideological leaners who tend to support you. And you have to look for losing more support than that number can account for. If it goes below that number, that conglomerate support, you have a real problem. Biden clearly has done so. For many, many months, he was averaging about 41, 42% approval. And it was almost completely linear. And I called it weeks before it went linear, saying, look, I think that I see a floor and ceiling forming. His disapproval averaged about 53, 54. So you have a very narrow range, and it was roughly a straight line. And it began roughly in January of 2022. And it continued roughly until May, the end of May specifically. And then more economic data came in. And now we're approaching recession. In fact, he could lose more support, to be clear, as of tomorrow. I'm just not ready to predict that. I don't know if he is stabilizing. I just see a line forming. I think that as of roughly the middle of June, he formed a new ceiling. This doesn't affect the approval, which is the floor, but it affects the disapproval, and the two are correlated, of roughly 57% disapproval. I think that barring catastrophe, he doesn't go much higher than that. Again, 55 to 58% disapproval. The approval will probably fall further. Again, the two numbers do not add up to 100. That's number one. And number two, as of tomorrow, we officially will be entering a recession. This could drop it further. But if a person doesn't already disapprove of Joe Biden, is the fact that we're in a recession really going to change their minds, is my question. I don't think that it does, because what you're seeing is that approval number is just the Dem partisans in the country. He'll lose approval, but I can't imagine he gains much disapproval from them. I think that he's gone past the soft floor and ceiling, and now is at his intermediate floor and ceiling. If too much worse goes on, especially before the midterms, then he goes even past them, and he hits like the final level at which he could go effectively to zero. He could go to Bush after Katrina levels of approval. It's possible. But you have to have even more impetus for that to happen. Again, remember, for 5 fucking months, the American people kept him at that linear trajectory, despite the fact that inflation kept rising and there was a war and all of these other things happening. Yet stubbornly, they still refused to let him go. Now they finally are. You see a nice linear trajectory of approval, by the way, between the 42 and the 37 margin. If you're using RCP, again, link in the description, you can look at it for yourself. Very, very linear. You couldn't hope for a more fucking straight line, which is great. Makes analysis easier. Shaker Silver, I think DeSantis is pushed not because Dems want him. They want a fracture in the GOP regardless of who gets nominated. If it's DeSantis VP, that would backfire. True. Although it's unlikely that he would be chosen as running mate. Haverkamp Harassment Chronicles. Have any true matriarchies ever existed? Well, the Amazons, technically. Certain groups in ancient Britain, around the time of the Roman invasion, some of them were led by women. Gerald Armstrong. Sticks, ever play No Man's Sky? It's a great game. I heard mostly negative things about him. It didn't really catch my interest. So yes, I believe that a new ceiling is forming for Biden. I don't know where the floor is, but I have to assume it's close. However, again, there is uncertainty, so I'm not an official prediction of the floor because we may get recession declaration literally tomorrow. It's going to be a good day. Even if they say, oh no, actually Q2 was better than expected. It came in positive. Oh, well, it'll still be major news. Biden recession delayed for another quarter. Sean Brem, did you see the other day where Biden was wanting to sell another 20 million barrels of oil? Looks like he is worried again. Biden is worse than Carter. Yeah, definitely. Bodicea, says Thomas DW. Yes, indeed. Bodicea. Now we've got Matt Gaetz. He trolled the leftoids again. And it was clearly trolling. Jack the Soviet pointing this out. Reporter, is it safe to say that based off your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight? And Gates says, yeah, and then he basically leaves. This is 3D chess in the sense that he knows that nobody that supports him doesn't support this. Whether you agree with it or not is irrelevant. They all support this. Meanwhile, the people who don't like him are already frenetic about them. They've already been launching false allegations of him being, a pervert for now, a year and a half or something like that. He reads the room and he figures this will get him attention. It'll be very mimetic. And he's not apologizing for his statement. I find this hilarious. This is exactly what people who are embattled by the deep state need to do. Again, this Jack Nicholson in a lookalike here, which is what Matt Gaetz looks like, low-rent Jack Nicholson, is certainly not my favorite politician. His attitude alone rubs me the wrong way because he is so acerbic. That being said, there are usefulnesses to being acerbic and troll-like, and Matt Gaetz has managed to strike that fine balance in this particular clip. So take a look at it. Again, analyze it for yourself. I find it pretty funny. This is the problem of the Democrats, too. Here's their big problem. Even those of us that support a woman's right to choose cannot get on board with what the Democrats are actually doing to uphold it, because their idea is Northam abortion. Abortion legal through the end of the third trimester, maybe even post-birth abortion. Yeah, nobody really cares. Hey, we should shout our abortions out. We should be proud of the fact that we had this experience, as opposed to simply saying I had a medical procedure out of necessity. That's not something I'm proud of. It's not part of my fucking identity or anything. I just believe abortion should be legal. That's all you get to say. But the Democrats can't leave it at that. They insist on overstretching on literally every social issue that they're handed on a silver platter. The SCOTUS handed them a gift, and they swatted it out of SCOTUS' hand and let it lay in a pile of pig shit, and then they picked it up and stuffed it in their ass. That's basically what the Democrats did with Roe v. Wade. They had the opportunity to actually flip the political paradigm. Instead of choosing to take that opportunity, they decided to go even more fanatic than any of the red states. A state outright banning abortion is arguably less fanatic, especially if you look at the world at large, which Bernie Sanders always tells us to do on any other issue, than having 9-month abortion ban. Less fanatic. Having it outright banned is less frenetic than some of the proposals by the Democratic Party. Andrus Berzins on Rumble. Tarl, if a martini could be sleazy, could a sleazy be martini? And how martini can a sleazy martini be? Looking forward to the midterms. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. We'll see if we can get him to drink a martini maybe during the midterms. It'll probably go about 4 hours. I imagine everyone will get a little bit thirsty. I don't know. I'll have something to sip on. It'll presumably be caffeinated. Rel 21,000. If someone like Beto ever becomes governor of Texas, could Texas become a sanctuary state? And what could that mean for the border? I think that's not going to happen. Number one, because Beto won't win. He's basically doomed. He's doing his cringe thing. He's basically more of the AOC style candidate, like just post on Twitter constantly to an echo chamber. And he thinks because he gets a good response to people who already like him, that means that his polls are rising. But they're not. They've been basically linear now for the better part of, 6 months. Now, I don't think they would become a sanctuary state anyway, because the legislature there is still overwhelmingly Republican. So it wouldn't pass. Dave MC, Delaware Dems are fed up, so keep the faith and clank on. Now they're fed up with Joe Biden. Mega Sea Monkey, you should try Lemo Saltado. It's a Peruvian dish made with sirloin strips, veggies, French fries, and served with white rice. Very tasty and filling. Yeah, I've been looking up all sorts of interesting recipes. Today is the ancient Roman chicken recipe. Originally, I was going to make a lou palak, which is an Indian recipe, and sort of carrot, I don't know what you'd call it, pancakes almost, with a radish-based dip for it. And it's all Indian food. But then I mentioned this recipe that a fan had actually posted on Twitter on my Asafoetida post. And then Liz, she likes chicken much more than I do. And she's like, yeah, I'll make that instead. So I figured it sounds good. Give me an opportunity to try out a spice that I've never used before. Michael Cricklow, have you seen the subway video of teens assaulting police officers in New York, released without having to post bail? New York policy is insane. Many such cases. But I don't care what happens in New York City. I say let them suffer. They voted for the government they deserve. They got what they fucking deserved in New York City. Fuck them. Aquafan, No Man's Sky sucked on release. It took a year of updates and bug fixes to become a great game. Yeah, maybe I'll have to try it out. MRN, put it towards a slice of dank. Keep grinding till Clankdom come. I don't use marijuana anymore. I'll probably use that for a culinary herb like basil or something. By the way, I can't wait to grow a shit ton of that. The smell after it rains and it's a nice hot sunny day with a little wind. You'll smell the basil across the garden. A crafty Huragok, what's the difference in a recession and a depression, Sticks? Do you think they will change the definition of depression like they want with recession? Depression is just deeper. It's like more joblessness. I think that the only difference is in degrees. So if you've got negative GDP and things just generally aren't good, it's a recession. If things are really, really bad, it's a depression. I do think that the Biden admin would be crazy enough to try to change the definition of depression if one hits. To answer the question, yes. OMG puppies. Massey is a smart guy in the Senate. Have you looked at his self-sufficient farm experiments? Solar-powered chicken tractor. He's a wacky inventor. Sounds good. I want to raise chickens. I think they're cute. Sean Brem, in 14th Congressional District of Georgia here. Did you see the guy running against MTG is a DOD and DOS contractor? No, but it doesn't surprise me. Not a little. Next story. This is from Quillette. This is desperately begging all of us. This is by Christopher Ferguson. Stop sharing political memes. They are a doorway into stupidity and misery. I'm not going to bother reading out any of this article because it's pure boomer. In my 50 plus years, yeah, we can tell, dude. The entire idea of this article is basically for those of us who are living still in yesteryear's socio-political climate, like the Bush admin or back on before that. We're scared of your political memes. They spread too quickly, and it's disinfo, and it's making people sad, and you're trolling and bullying people and stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, were you not on the internet in the fucking 2000s? Where were you in 1999 or something like that? The things are way more edgy back then as a whole. The reason why you get boomerist articles like this is because memes work. And I've been saying it for years now. Memetics is a mental operation on the human brain. That's why Pepe was so popular. It was irreducibly complex. You were able to show emotion, and it was just variations on a theme of something that can't really get less complex unless you make it a self-satire of the meme itself. So sketched Pepe or something. The reason why they don't want you to spread political memes is because they are toxic. And by toxic, that means that they're basically like fucking chemotherapy for the boomerism and the political constructs of the world. I see that as a good thing. The world could use a little bit of political chemotherapy. Yes, memes are alchemical, says Yin Yang Salad Gang. Agreed to an extent. They're transformative. Sebastian Monroe, get ducks too. They'll eat slugs in your garden. I'd rather just eat the ducks. They wouldn't be eating too. I'll just eat the slugs too. So I'll have the best of both worlds. Anyway, so yeah, that's just a quick throwaway there. It's just a boomer article I thought that was funny. Stop sharing political news, please. Oh my God. They simply feed an unconstructive cycle of anger, misinformation, and polarization. Oh my God, you riled people up. That's so terrible. Don't you know that people have the right to go on the internet and the whole internet is a safe space and nobody's allowed to challenge them on their views or call them out as what they really are, which is usually fucking stupid or ugly? Yeah. Happens to me all the time. I don't consider it toxic. I consider it fucking funny. Cyberbully. Every day I thank my lucky stars I'm not David Pakman. Yeah, just imagine being him. Jesus. Have a lot more money, but imagine selling your soul for his particular salary. Now, the last news story. Ukraine publishes blacklist of individuals designated as enemies of Ukraine who promote Russian propaganda. Included in the list are American politicians Rand Paul and Tulsi Gabbard and French opposition leader Marine Le Pen. Very interesting. So Rand Paul is now working for the Kremlin. How? Because he believes in responsible spending when we're literally in a recession now, as of possibly tomorrow. Yeah. How dare he suggest that we should help ourselves before we pump even more taxpayer money into Ukraine for no reason? Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard's on there. There's a bunch of other people on there. David Payne, Jeffrey Sachs. Yeah, I don't know most of these people because nobody gives a shit. I guess those are the only three that they cared about. It's the only reason they made the tweet. Yeah, Rand Paul, the Russian. Tulsi Gabbard, yeah, friend of Russia, because she doesn't want to bomb small children. Didn't we hear this sort of horse shit with the Iraq war? Well, you're not patriotic. You don't want to fight them over there, so clearly you support Al-Qaeda because you don't want to send limitless amounts of troops and money and bomb a bunch of people in some third world fucking godforsaken desert. You terrible anti-patriot. You're basically a pinko commie. We've heard this shit before. It's just that now we have a liberal regime running the United States. So naturally, the Ukrainians decide to put a couple of people that are outside of that particular neolib neocon establishment on the list, of course, just to be clear. They were even-handed, though. Tulsi Gabbard, fairly far left. Yeah, I know that she pretends on TV not to be, but she's a leftoid. And then Rand Paul, who's marginally libertarian-leaning. And then Marine Le Pen. What the fuck are you even talking about with Marine Le Pen? Marine Le Pen, other than the isolationist aspect as regards things outside of France, she's basically no different from Macron. She's to the left of him on economic issues. Who gives a shit? And by the way, why is it that there are so many American politicians looking at stuff like this and taking it seriously? You're effectively siding with Ukraine over your own fellow citizens, over ideological differences that only loosely could be termed pro-Russia at all, let alone disinformation campaigns. It's a little bit like believing the ADL when they label somebody a Nazi. Meanwhile, actual Nazis in Ukraine, they're perfectly fine for some reason, given an explicit pass by the SPLC. Sparky, F Ukraine. See, I support the Ukrainians' right to sovereignty, but when I see the Ukrainian government is making a blacklist that involves, U.S. politicians that are at least semi-sane, I have to wonder why anyone on this side of the pond is taking this shit seriously. Cooter, are there VLA shortages in the Netherlands? I hope not. Oh, VLA. I thought that was an acronym at first. No, there's plenty of VLA. I happen not to enjoy it. I don't eat pudding. I don't eat really any sweets. I don't even eat fruit as much now. I prefer vegetables and shit. I try to limit my sugar intake as much as possible. It's just not good for you. Gerald Armstrong, thoughts on the Zelensky Vogue photo? I have absolutely no thoughts on that, but I did see one of those photos posted. I thought that was very funny. By the way, even though we appear to be throttled over on YouTube to some degree for some reason, we still have about 4,200 people watching live. Actually, 4,300, which is quite a few Biden lose units. 14, I believe, or thereabouts. Yeah, people saying, Hail Azov. Yeah, I don't give a shit about not. If someone's a Nazi, it doesn't mean they can't fight for their country's sovereignty. I don't have a problem with that. But it is telling when you've got groups that will call a YouTuber a Nazi for making an off-color joke 10 years ago, saying the Azov Battalion's actually pretty cool. There's nothing wrong with them. There is a double standard involved. That's all that I'll know. Shark Media, you can't live without sugar, moron. Oh yeah, your cells definitely use sugar. And I don't eat starchy foods much either, James Andrew Morrison. Rice is okay. Potatoes are fine once in a while, but I try not to eat like breads and shit like that. I prefer heartier foods like meats, vegetables, and dairy products especially. Dairy products are the best. The most flavorful, most delicious, the most ethnically appropriate. Hey, it's the one food that someone of Caucasian ancestry can eat, and they can't be claimed to be culturally appropriating things. Anything with lactose in it. But yes, you can't live without sugar, but you can definitely live without consuming refined sugar. That includes even the more complex ones. There is no necessity to it. Your body is capable of processing all of the food that you see in the store and turning it into calories and grabbing micronutrients of various kinds from it. Danger Aaron, a certain MRE supply company sends a free box of them to combat veterans with DD214 and $50 purchase. FYSA. Schwing. Interesting. A free box of MREs to combat veterans. Must be great to be a combat veteran. Red Raider Matthias, Ukraine has learned to overstretch just like the Dems. Yes, it does look kind of like that. Like they're sort of jumping the gun. It's like Zelensky demanding money from the rest of the world. Like, oh, where the fuck do you get off? Other people are giving you fucking pity tanks at this point, and you're demanding more money? Why don't you fuck yourself? Why don't you take some of the money that you embezzled over all of those years and liquidate that for the Ukrainian people? I'm sure that they would be very, very interested to know exactly how much personal wealth you really have. Probably right up there with Putin. Slitch63 on Rumble. The globalist machinations are so transparent and pervasive, they have become opaque to most weird. Yeah, exactly. They tell the big lie and they tell it so large and so obvious that people just laugh it off as though it was some sort of joke. They don't want to believe that things are as bad as they are. Nick F. Sticks is unbreaded. No, I will eat grains, especially rice. I'll make noodles once in a while. And of course, potatoes are fine. The starchy roots, like, fucking yams or shit. But I don't eat them as often. I would prefer something that's dairy rich. Lentils are really good, chickpeas. I like Indian food a lot. And a lot of that doesn't really have carbs in it, unless it's like aloo palak with potatoes or something. Sparky, pro tip, don't back Ukrainian Nazis. Sebastian Monroe, I DM'd you about D's beans. Hold or send to Vermont. You can send those off to Vermont, to my address there if you want. I'll get back to you later on that. I will, by the way, pay you for the Dr. Pepper beans. Don't worry, you won't absorb a hit. I know food is expensive these days. I'm interested in how they taste. James Andrew Morrison, homemade baked beans not saturated in salt and sugar. Yes, I've made my own baked beans as well. They are less sugary. They're better than canned baked beans. The Grizzly, how likely is it that Kamala runs in 24? Not hugely likely. In order for that to happen, there'd have to be a primary process, and she'd probably lose anyway, because it means Biden would have stepped aside. Ulfric Stormhammer 666, no coiners equals neolibs equals pedophiles, over on Rumble. Anyway, I think that I'm going to go off now. I don't know why fewer people seem to have been notified on YouTube. I think there's something fucky going on there, but still hit more than 4,000 people at peak. So I'm not exactly complaining because it's still higher than it used to be. So yeah, there's your news roundup of the day. And don't worry, there will be a live roundup tomorrow as well, along with the normal videos. And I've been doing a shit ton of writing and editing and stuff. So I've got a lot on my plate. And a newborn child as well. So that's about all. Peace out.